Is Adobe Fresco the best drawing app for iPad? Someone asked me to try it, and the first thing they show you is this canvas with brush samples. There are a lot of painterly brushes and they all look pretty good. The interface is pretty much similar to Photoshop for iPad, but Fresco's tools are more focused on digital painting than for image editing. I know that many artists are using Photoshop for drawing, but with the release of Procreate, Ibispaint, Clip Studio Paint, and a lot more drawing apps these past few years, I think Adobe wanted their own digital art focused app that can be used on iPad. By the way, yes, I am aware that Adobe has some controversies, but that's the story for another day. Today, let's focus on Fresco. There are 3 brush functions on the toolbar. Pixel brush, live brush. What's a live brush? Can it breathe or something? And vector brush. The pixel brush is your usual brush. It has a lot of selections from basic, charcoal, comics, FX, ink, lettering. Moving on to the live brush, it only has 2 selections, watercolor and oil. Let's try the watercolor. Oh, it moves a little. Yeah, can you see it? Yeah, it moves. It's like a real watercolor. Huh, that's so cool. Oh, maybe that's why they call it live brush. If you increase the water flow, you can see the movement even clearer. Okay, that is so cool. Okay, anyway, so there are 2 selections, watercolor and oil. Let's try oil. Okay, so it has like oil painting texture and it doesn't move like the watercolor does. Personally, I prefer the oil painting look, but it doesn't move like the watercolor. Okay, so the third one is the vector brush. Judging from the selection, I think this is for line arts. I don't know why, but with this brush, you can draw beyond your canvas. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's pretty cool, but why? Maybe some of you can educate me in the comments. I also noticed this gray or white circle thing that you can move around. And you can also do the same thing with this brush adjustment panel. That's very convenient. So back to the gray circle. Apparently this is like a touch shortcut. So to activate it, you have to click it twice. And its function is different depending on which brush you chose. When you're using the pixel brush, for example, it will turn your brush into an eraser. There's actually an eraser, but its selection is limited. I myself prefer my eraser to be the same shape as my brush. I don't see why eraser shapes have to differ from the brushes. To change it back into the brush, just tap it once and it will turn back into the brush. This is such a great feature actually. It's really convenient, and the fact that you can move it around wherever you want makes it easier to access. For a live brush, it's different for watercolor and oil painting. So right now I'm using the watercolor brush, and if you click on the gray circle twice, it will turn the brush into pure water. It's so satisfying watching it moves around like that. I think this would be great for blending and creating the aurora effect you see on actual watercolor painting. In oil painting, however, it turns the brush into a dry brush, which only extends the color from your existing brush strokes. The effect is kind of cool if you have 2 colors like this because it also blends the color and can extend it. The vector brush is the most confusing one. So if you activate the gray circle, it will act as an eraser. But if you click the circle again, instead of becoming a brush, it becomes a trim segment and it erases the brush. Yeah, I don't think I will be using the vector brush. It's too confusing. Maybe you have small brain. Yeah, maybe. Okay, let's get into the drawing. I will explore more features as the drawing progresses. Today I'm drawing a big boy. Wait, no, a big man. Because Genshin finally released Varka's visual and oh my god, is he massive. Judging from the size of his thighs, I think he's got the same model as Ryo, which is... Thank you, HoYoverse. I'm also really excited for Flints. I actually wanted to draw him for this video, but I was too thirsty for Varka. So, I really like Flint's design. It's very dark and gloomy, but in a good way. He's like a really hot Undertaker or Grim Reaper. Anyway, back to Fresco. Thankfully, Fresco has Liquify, which is under Transform. I can no longer draw without Liquify, Without Liquify, I am as useless as traffic lights in GTA. Fresco's Liquify is much smoother than Ibispaint's and Clip Studio's. I think it's as smooth as Procreate's and Photoshop's, which is great. For the clean sketch, I will add a multiply layer. I like how they show you the previews, so you have the gist of what each blending mode does. Before we continue, I found this feature called Paint Inside. It's really cool. So suppose you have a line art of a circle. This is a very ugly circle. And then you want to paint the inside of the circle. See, it bleeds everywhere, right? But if you turn on the paint inside, you can just paint it inside and the color won't bleed everywhere. As long as the line art is closed properly, this is very cool. You can use multiple colors too and it still won't bleed everywhere. If your line art is pretty thick like my ugly circle here, you can also color the line art. This is a very neat feature, especially if you're making like a webtoon or something. I'm experimenting with different brushes for the clean sketch. I want my brush to be a bit textured but also can blend properly, so I can use it for rendering as well. For now, I'm using the Belgian Comics brush, but I don't think I can render with this since it's very rough and sharp. But I haven't found anything better so far. I'm drawing yet another thirst trap because 1. I'm very dehydrated. 2. Just look at my reference. Holy fucking shit. 3. I can't draw Genshin's detailed outfits because of my skill issue. For base colors, you can reference the clean sketch so the colors don't bleed everywhere when using the paint bucket tool. I also tried using the hue and saturation, but it's making an adjustment layer on top of my original drawing instead of applying the adjustments on my current layer. So I have to clip it so it doesn't affect all my layers. Okay, let me show you the pros and cons to this feature. The good thing is, whatever color adjustments you make can be easily fixed and deleted since it's not directly applied to your original layer. The downside is you have to constantly clip it so it doesn't affect all the layers. So for example, if I have a layer underneath this chicken and then I draw like a flower, see, I use a yellow brush, but it becomes pink because the hue and saturation also affects the layer below the chicken. So we have to constantly clip the adjustment layer. Also, say I only want to change the color of a portion of my drawing. Let's say the red part. Then I go to hue and saturation. Well, I can't because it also affects all the layers below it. So the method I've been using so far is to duplicate the selection and then apply hue and saturation on it. Don't forget to clip it though. If any of you guys are seasoned Adobe Fresco users, please let me know in the comments if there's a smarter way to do this. Now we're moving on to the shading. I will apply the soft shadow using the airbrush. I'm quite sensitive about airbrushes. It has to be just the right amount of softness and it also can't be too dark in the middle. Fresco's airbrush is a bit too soft for me, but it's really smooth, so that's pretty good. Speaking of things that make me sensitive, is Adobe Fresco free? Well, I googled it and apparently it's a freemium. You can pay to get more cloud storage and access to premium Adobe fonts, which I don't think is necessary. So far, they haven't asked me to pay for stuff or pull a dick move like Art Studio Pro where I lose my progress when I close the app for 2 seconds. So yeah, I think it's free, which is super great because I am not paying shit. Anyway, I want to try shading with a live brush. I'm gonna use watercolor. It's so satisfying watching the color moves like water being absorbed by paper. Is it just me, or the thicker the color, the more it looks like Copic markers instead of watercolor? By the way, I'm also drawing a bare-chested version like I did with Abby in my previous video. I will censor it and cover it with clothes as the drawing progresses because I don't want to be slapped by yellow dollars. But I think at this stage it's still fine. It doesn't look like a human body yet. I tried painting over the sketch with the watercolor brush, but it's too soft and lacks texture, so I'm switching to soft acrylic brush instead. It doesn't blend well though, even at low opacity. I'm not gonna talk too much about how I render, that's for another video, but I will focus on the drawing experience. So far, there are two things that bothers me. First, I can't see my brush. You know how in Ibispaint there's this circle that's following your every movement? So I can get an idea of how big my brush is. I cannot seem to do that in Fresco. Yeah, hi, Fong from the future here. I was stupid. I'm still stupid. Turns out there is a way. I just didn't look hard enough because I am stupid. Ayah, mengapa aku bodoh? What you wanna do is click on this gear icon and then click app settings and then hit input, and there is brushes. In brush preview, you just have to choose either brush stamp or crosshairs. If you chose brush stamp, it will show the shape of your brush and how big it is on the canvas as you draw. But if you choose crosshair, it will just show this tiny little plus sign. I prefer using brush stamp so I can see how big my brush is. I found out about this very late in the drawing process, so you will see me drawing without the brush preview for a couple minutes. But while we're in the app settings, I want to show you the general interface adjustments. So you can change the toolbar position from left to right or right to left depending on your comfort, or if you're left-handed or right-handed or ambidextrous. There's also canvas projection. So I'm drawing on an iPad, and if I want to see my canvas on my laptop, I can just enable this. But I need to use AirPlay or a cable to connect to the second display. Fresco can also automatically detect and add colors to the color picker when you import photos using the Auto Create color palette, which is pretty cool. And there's this enable East Asian type options. I don't know what this is. And the rest is just export settings, restore, and time-lapse settings. Nothing too interesting. So yeah, that's it on the app settings. Future Fong out. The second thing that bothers me is the eyedropper tool. There's nothing wrong with the color picking per se, but more like the screw it. Let me just show you. Okay, so say I was erasing something, right? Then I want to use the eyedropper tool to pick this color. And see how it stays on the eraser after I pick a color instead of switching to brush? Normally in Ibispaint and Procreate, whenever I use the eyedropper tool, it would automatically switch to the brush, so I can immediately paint after I pick the color. The experience is more seamless this way. Maybe Fresco doesn't have this feature because they have 3 brush functions and it would be confusing which brush to switch into. Okay, Adobe, let me give you an input, a very humble input. Maybe just switch into the last used brush function. Something to think about, Adobe. Come on, we're looking for a seamless drawing experience here. My hair painting right now is very rough. I cannot seem to render properly using this soft acrylic brush. If the end result doesn't look smooth, I apologize in advance. I haven't found a suitable brush yet. I also tried using the oil painting brush, but it turns out the texture is too strong and it doesn't blend that well. I think this brush would look better as a finishing look, maybe like covering the whole painting with it so it looks like an oil painting. I experimented with other brushes and I found that natural brush works so well. So far, this is the best one for me. Not too textured, not too soft. Unfortunately though, it doesn't blend well, so I'm combining it with the smudge tool. Fresco smudge is pretty good, but the default setting is blurring my drawing too much, so I'm lowering the strength. Okay, the drawing is not finished yet, but this is not a drawing process video, so let's focus on the app and its features instead. No, I'm not avoiding my responsibility to finish the drawing. Anyway, I noticed that Fresco doesn't have a lot of color adjustment tools. They only have brightness and contrast, hue saturation, and color balance. Well, I mean, if it has a lot of color adjustments, then it's no different than Photoshop, right? So apparently my drawing is automatically saved into my Adobe Cloud because I have an account there, and I can open my Varka drawing in Photoshop with all the layers intact. So I can just do the advanced image editing there. I see what you did there, Adobe. Trying to keep the users in your ecosystem. Very crafty. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Companies do that all the time so you don't move on to another product. Just look at Apple. If you don't have Photoshop but still want to do an advanced image editing, you can export your drawing to PSD and open it in Procreate or CSP. Their editing features are not as advanced as Photoshop, but they're still pretty great. There's a cool feature called Elements, where you can find a lot of image assets. They even have like comic panel templates. This would be really great to add texture to your drawing. I like to experiment with different textures and elements because they can turn the drawings from into ooh. Even something as simple as paper texture can make it more aesthetic. I don't know why it went beyond the canvas, but let's not dwell on that. I usually set the texture to multiply or color burn or linear burn. Multiply, color burn, and linear burn can increase the contrast. It makes the drawing look sharper. Overlay also works great, but it turns the drawing lighter, so take that into consideration or just lower the opacity. But I prefer using either color burn or linear burn. Burn. I really like this feature. I know you can just Google these textures, but come on, it cuts the time we have to spend Googling, so why not? Apparently, Fresco also has an animation feature. There's motion presets, advanced settings, and a lot more that I will try to cover in future video because holy macaroni, my brain can't handle animation right now. There's too much to explore and experiment with, and I don't think I have enough brain cells left to deal with that. So is Fresco the best drawing app for iPad? I would have to say no, despite its being a really great and solid app. Look, I don't experience major frustrations or hiccups when I'm drawing. The features are very convenient, the brushes are amazing, and the interface is quite easy to use. However, Procreate, CSP, and Ibispaint have a plus point because you can draw and do advanced editing in only one app. Unlike Fresco, where you have to move to Photoshop to do advanced image editing. But the experience is seamless, so it's still a great app to use. And I would highly recommend you guys to at least try using it. Experiment with the brushes, they're really great. And I think that's about it. Here's a blurry picture of a bare-chested Varka. Okay, I will find out how to do membership so you guys can see shirtless man drawings freely if you want. I have a couple. Okay, that's it. Bye bye.